Let us now look at one more cutting edge example of intelligent transport system, part of the upcoming an IoT application, okay, and that is related to vehicle platooning. Platooning has started assuming greater proportions, particularly with the fact that the 5G is coming up in a big way, right. So 5G technologies are going to be applied for are likely one definite application area for 5G appears to be in platooning. Question is, what is platooning and what exactly goes behind in a platoon is something you are, I am sure, curious to know, and let us go and look up little bit of understand little bit of theory in platooning, and then also try and see if we can create a platoon in simulation software, so that you can try a platoon system and try out your own algorithms in front of your own computers and laptops. Okay. So it is essentially to train you to understand what are the newer things that are coming up in the area related to intelligent transportation systems. I must tell you, if you before even you go and do a continue with this course, I mean continue to read this module on intelligent transport, go and look up YouTube videos. There are some outstanding practical examples of the proof of concept of a platoon. Okay, I have seen that there are companies, particularly these are motivated by European giants, automotive giants. You have Scania, which started talking about this. You have a platoon implementation by Mercedes, you have a platoon implementation by Volvo and so on. So it is really a very exciting area, and so I think it is important for you to understand the whole concept. So now let us understand and ask ourselves in a very informal way, what is this platoon all about? See, platoon is nothing but a collection of vehicles of the same type, preferably of the same type. If you are talking about trucks, you are talking about trucks of the same tonnage capability or loading capability, all of them on a highway. Most often platoonings we are talking about freeways or highways, where you are moving from one state to another state or from one country and to another country and so on. Huge trucks, right, big trucks which are carrying a lot of material from one side to the other. These can essentially form a collection of vehicles. The thing is, if you are able to get these trucks to coordinate amongst themselves, collect them together in a logical fashion, and use communication infrastructure to communicate between these collection of vehicles, then you get some magic outputs, you will see some magic outputs. First thing is, you will see that safety will improve if provided your algorithms are right, your algorithms are working well, and you will get safety as a very important consideration. Second thing is, greenhouse gases, they will reduce tremendously, okay. That is a second major advantage you will get. Third thing is, so safety, reduction in pollution becomes very important. Third one is, if you platoon, just look at the urban highway infrastructure, both urban as well as the highway infrastructure. Roads are always crowded, right, and any amount or any wide road is very soon gets choked in any good major upcoming city, not good city but upcoming city. Cities are never good to stay, by the way. You should stay in far off and little bit smaller towns and perhaps even villages to lead a good peaceful life. But anyway, so the roads are always choked, but if you platoon, you can get them logically together and pack a lot more vehicles on the freeway, on the highway, which means utilization of the infrastructure improves tremendously, right. So, these capabilities are something that you will get automatically. The fourth thing is fuel efficiency. The reason why that fuel improves is that when you logically pack them together into a platoon, into the collection of vehicles into one group, the air drag that is offered by the offered to the complete system is much lower compared to the air drag that each vehicle would see, right, which means you are able to improve fuel efficiency. You are consuming less fuel because your opposing air is much lesser, and this can sort of be a big advantage for so there are a lot of benefits out there. And you know, greenhouse gases is a major challenge, and if it reduces even by 5 to 7% for this platoon from a complete platoon as compared to individual, then you are doing already very good, because you know generation of electricity, energy is one sector where greenhouse gases seem to be contributing, transportation is contributing, agriculture is contributing, smart homes are contributing, right. All these sectors are major sources of greenhouse gases. I think agriculture is no, I think the transportation I think is roughly the same as that of energy generation, and third is agriculture. So, intelligent transportation, then energy generation are 1 and 2, can't remember which one of them is 1, but surely one of them is top 2, okay. Then the third is agriculture, the fourth is smart homes. These are all sources essentially leading to a lot of greenhouse gases, essentially trapping of light that seems to create heating of the earth surface, right. So, in brief that is what it is, and several gases are there. Methane is one of them, then nitrous oxide is another gas, and so many other pollutants are there. We can look at them in other if time permits in other modules. So, these are the major advantages if you platoon them. But as a technologist, what all do you require, and so what are the things that you can implement in a IoT course? Why is IoT coming into this platooning area? Because supposing you want to pack these vehicles closer, you need very good sensors, right. You may need radar, you may need LiDAR, you may need camera sensors, all of them fusing the data from these sensors and somehow trying to sort of keep the platoon going, keep the inter vehicle distance to a critical point such that the air drag is minimized and other benefits accrue because of the platoon. So, the fact that all these sensors are by and large now part of IoT infrastructure, a course on IoT applications, advanced IoT applications with platooning is a must. Also because the 5G connected vehicles module comes in a big way. So, that is another story, this about V2X as they call, vehicle to X infrastructure, it could be vehicle to vehicle, right. So, all this is part of the major initiatives in 5G. So, now let us look at a set of small slide deck, okay. Now, there is a definition here as you can see. So, platooning is a collection of vehicles, okay. I will not read everything, you can read it at any point, but just to give you, essentially it is a collection of vehicles. There is communication, there is collaboration, and they have very common goals such as safety, minimal travel, fuel efficiency, reduction of greenhouse gases, drive comforts and all of that, right. So, essentially it comes under intelligent or smart transportation planning, and communication between vehicles in this platoon should happen through a wireless technology, because you can't tie these vehicles, you have to put them logically together. So, wireless technology and therefore 5G becomes a big candidate for trying out these platoon applications. As you can see that IoT is considered as a major push for supporting this intelligent transportation system application, right. So, let us now look at that picture. It is a very interesting picture, and lot of stories you can already build on this picture. There is a vehicle in the front, there is a car in the front, and you can see the size of the ones that are behind. They are almost identical sizes, which means when you say collection of vehicles, they are all almost of the same type. You will not do a platoon of trucks and cars, you would perhaps do a platoon of trucks, you would do a platoon of maybe SUVs and segments of that type of vehicles. So, you see a nice sort of a sprinkler picture from the first car to the second car, you can see that. So, that essentially means there is some sort of logical connection, grouping of all these vehicles, and there is some sort of communication that seem to be happening on the between these vehicles. Do not forget, the picture itself is so well taken, it is again from somewhere on the internet. This is shown on a turning, there is a curve here, which clearly indicates even if you have a platoon, you need not assume that platoons are for highways and platoons are for roads which are absolutely straight. It can also be that highways have lot of turnings, and this platoon continues to work even if there are turnings and there are bends and all that. So, that is the nice takeaway from this slide. So, let us go to the next slide. The next slide is telling you about so the big takeaway from this is there is a lot of effort from the European community, particularly from ETSI, and the subcommittee working group there is the ITS, Intelligent Traffic System Subcommittee, technical committee, looking at how to do standardization and so on. By and large, you will see that platooning comes in two flavors. One is called full platooning and the other is called minimal platooning. There is also a sort of platoon, not necessarily a platoon, but indeed some sort of cooperative awareness messaging. Even if you do not have a platoon, you could be doing this awareness message and decentralized environment notification messages, which can be exchanged between vehicles from a safety perspective. Okay. So, let us look at what a full platoon is. See, the way to imagine full platoon is, let me just gesture and tell you the following. Do not have to really go into those slides, but let us just discuss this. Platoon is like you have a driver, okay. The driver is sitting and then there is a button. If you look at the Mercedes video which I told you, which I mentioned to you, you can see that they press buttons, and once you press the button, then the platoon can start to form. That means the driver, the physical driver is the one who is initiating a platoon, which means there is still a human intervention as far as such a platoon is concerned. But why should you imagine things like that? You can also say that why should I know when to start a platoon, right? It should happen all by itself. It sees a similar vehicle, truck, or a similar loading capacity or a tonnage capacity truck in front, and they have a certain communication capability, they should simply be able to form a platoon. By the way, platoon is not just for 2, it is typically 3, 4 and above. For 2 it does not make sense. So, I do not think you will see a platoon of less than 3, at least the videos I recall there are more than 3 and more, okay. So, that is the point. So, it should happen automatically, which means if you say full platooning system, then you talk about automatic message passing between trucks and vehicles, and then they are forming a platoon even without the awareness of the driver. Driver is just driving, and then suddenly there is a message says take your hands off, we have formed a platoon and now we are going to move in a platoon. The driver is informed that he should take his hands off. That is one way, that is the full platoon. The other way is the driver presses a button. The second thing, minimal platoon, is the driver presses the button, initiates a platoon and then takes his hands off, okay. So, these are two possibilities. Remember, if you start imagining these two scenarios, in any case whether it is a full platoon or whether it is a minimal platoon, lane changing and all of our intersection, all these things the platoons have to warn that drivers have to take care of the steering, they have to get control of the steering. There are many situations where the driver has to take control of the steering and has to guide the vehicle manually. So, in whether it is automatic or whether it is minimal, I think we are still at least I would say half a decade and above to see a full platoon without a driver. That is not going to happen at least in the next 7-8 years, maybe even a decade. But it might ultimately happen because people are not interested in driving on a long highway, particularly if you take US or Canada or any of these places. So, the highway runs into thousands of miles, right. So, it is pretty difficult for humans to drive that kind of long distance and not get exhausted. So, the tiredness comes in. So, the remaining slides are essentially talking about that. It says full platoon, if you look at full platoon facility, there is a protocol for platooning. You make a platoon service known in surrounding area by sending service announcements. So, this is a nice sentence and we have a demo exactly I mean about this. So, make platooning service known to surrounding area by sending service announcements. This is a beautiful sentence. This is a minimum thing that you need to have. Okay. Then handle and generate service request for management of platoon, then share control data messages among participants of the platoon, these are all important things. Then there is handshaking, which includes negotiation of concerning sufficiency of technical capability and properties of the vehicle and so on. Again you do not have to, you see it is all very natural, right. If you have vehicles which are of different from different segments, you will have problems. For example, if you take trucks, they have a certain tonnage capability, they have a certain loading capability and they have certain fuel that is there and there is a certain braking capability that is provided. So, all this information should be passed on within the platoon. In a platoon essentially you will have a leader and you will have followers, right. What should be the minimum distance between the leader and the follower? Again I want you to go back and look at that YouTube video. It gives you tons of information in that small video clip. I recall that we are talking about platoons which are formed in inter vehicle distance D. Let us say D is the inter distance, I will call this D, this inter distance separation distance between vehicles. Okay. You have a vehicle, sorry, let me quickly draw my famous vehicle. Okay, there is one vehicle and then there is another vehicle, right. This inter distance we are talking, this is D, separation distance. People are attempting under 6 meters, something humanly not possible at all. If you have a driver, you cannot brake at 6 meters, you have reflexes to brake at 6 meters, it is not going to work. This is the attempt, this is what people want to, this is the goal, this is what they want to reach. But right now today it is anywhere between 30 to 50 meters, I think it is at least 30 meters, 30 they are able to go. Even 10 anywhere between 10 and 30 meters is also something that people have attempted. Sorry, my vehicle has met with an accident, so let me put it back. Alright, so people have, so they are looking at less than 6 meters as I said, but several video that you see they are even looking at 10, 15 and 30 meters and up to about 50 meters. 50 is easy, you can pull it off, but people are in highway it is still pretty close actually, 50 meters is pretty close. But anyway, people have demonstrated even 10 meters. So that is the point really, that if you look at that video they will actually tell you that the inter separation is that, and you may have to inform, vehicles have to talk to each other and say, hey, I can brake, this vehicle can say, tell this vehicle I can brake at 6 meters safely, okay, and you may have to announce back to say at what distance you will be able to brake, right. So you will have to, you can mention that back to the leader, and I will still keep a driver because we are not talking about completely autonomous. And you can also say what you want to do when you talk about this braking inter separation distance. You can also say that under any circumstance this D has to be maintained, right. This is the what you are looking at, the separation distance. And you can also mention to the followers what is the stopping distance. Supposing you see an obstacle, okay, that obstacle, moment you spot that obstacle, it does not mean that you will apply brake immediately, because that obstacle may simply pass off, right. It may be another moving object, it may go away, it may be far off, and it may just vanish as you go closer. So, but you can always specify what is the stopping distance that you are going to look at when you sort of deaccelerate, when you start, when this vehicle starts braking. So that is also specified, and that is informed back to the other followers as well. So that stopping distance is also an important thing. So I will say stopping distance from an obstacle, and also the separation distance between the vehicles. These are important parameters which you will have to look at. So you can see it is quite logical, right. So several parameters have to be passed back and forth in this direction and back in this direction to establish and say they all agree upon being part of a platoon. So there may be situations where agree to be part of a platoon. So this itself is not going to be simple. Therefore you can now see the reason, the rationale why you do not want to mix small vehicles with large vehicles. You do not want to mix trucks with small vehicles, because they have different capabilities. It does not make sense to expect the same kind of response from vehicles, but it might turn out that this little fellow may get sandwiched in very big vehicles, okay. So I will just go on a little further. So while you do not want to do this, right, you do not want to do this, it is possible that this might happen. These two were originally part of the platoon, rather they continue to be part of the platoon, but a vehicle from here came in the middle of these two. It is possible, in which case this D has to go up, right, this D has to move. So they, because it becomes equivalent of a stopping distance. So therefore what would happen in this case, while this is the stopping distance for an obstacle for the leader, this vehicle now becomes the obstacle for the followers. Therefore this D has to increase. So this D will have to go up. In other words, this vehicle may get pushed back. I will just show for easy part, I will just remove this and I will show you. Okay, so now that I rubbed it, I can now show it here, right. So you see it has moved back, this distance it has increased. So now your new D actually adds also the separation distance, also adds the stopping distance perhaps to maintain safety, okay. So these kind of things have to happen, capabilities have to be announced. So you need a fantastic protocol, good protocol to communicate from this vehicle to this vehicle, and perhaps also exchange some information in this direction. If there are followers behind this, this information has to hop, right. And now let me show you that same picture, why you need that that nice thing. You can see in this picture here, this essentially is doing that. It is just communicating one hop to the one behind follower, and the follower in turn is communicating, and so on and so forth. So now let us move on and see what are the minimum things you need to do in order to get a platoon going. Okay. So you essentially look at for full platoons, 3 important things have to happen. You talk about making platoon service, as I mentioned, service known to surrounding area by sending out service announcements, handle and generate service requests for management of platoon, and share control data messages, right. So full platoon means you have service requests, service announcements and control messages. So let us look at each one of them. The first one you will do after we do the second one, okay. The second one indeed is the service announcements. Now let me draw your attention back to this picture, okay. This can be elected as a leader, right. This can be elected as a follower. He becomes a follower if he agrees to be part of the platoon. Now what are the things that the leader has to do? The leader has to essentially make available the current position of the platoon. You can see this first one, length of the platoon in meters that he manages to, that he wishes to manage, what should be the length that he is looking at, set speed and actual speed, direction and destination route, platoon ID, service channel to use for service requests. Okay. I will go into some details of each one of them, do not have to by heart any of these things, but you will have to just get an overall view of the following. See let me put your attention back to this picture, okay. Here he is the leader, right. This leader is going in, the road either curves like this or the road can go straight as well. So let me draw a straight road. Now there is just no point if there are is going, let us say some 1000 miles, this will go in another direction. There is just no point in declaring to be a leader for a set of followers, but taking a deviation right here, it is not going to help, right. Which means you cease to be a leader moment you take a right turn. In other words, all information about in what direction you are going, okay, this is your DST, in what direction you are going, what is your final destination, at what speed you propose to go, and passing all information that you can be a leader and announcing your service capability as a leader, all of this should be mentioned right in the beginning. This is one part. Imagine a situation where on the same highway there are multiple tracks, right. There can be one more vehicle, okay. Let me remove this for clarity purpose. There can be one more vehicle running parallel to this guy, also making an announcement. He is making an announcement, this guy is also making an announcement. I have shown this for just to show you the wireless capability, okay, a wireless link. Now which one should this follower go after? Should it go after this leader or should it go after this leader? Now that will depend on the parameters announced by the two so called leaders, right. Let us say this leader says I am going 2000 miles, 2000 miles, which is indeed what this follower is looking at, okay. This follower finds that if it attaches to this leader, it can only follow for 1000 miles, but whereas this leader says I am going 2000 miles in the direction of what this follower is planning to do or planning to go. So this follower may now decide to go behind this leader. How to distinguish between this leader and that leader? You need a platoon ID, right. So there is an ID. So this ID is also part of what these leaders have to issue. So, that is also part of all the service announcement part that you see here. So, you can see and connect back here current position of the platoon, length of the platoon, set speed, direction, platoon ID and some channels for service requests, right. Service requests means those are requests which are going to come from followers. Now, what are the followers supposed to do? Go and look at 1.1, create platoon. That means it can say I want to be part of a platoon. So, he says I am ready, I want to create a platoon, I want to be part of a platoon, if indeed there is a platoon I would like to join. So, the second one is saying I am ready to be part of a platoon, that is create platoon. I want to be part of a platoon, join platoon. I want to leave a platoon because I think that the leader is not in the direction where I had planned originally, or I have special instructions by my whoever truck operator to take a different route, so on and so forth, or I have a problem with my vehicle and I would like to go by a lay-by and stop there or do whatever. So, there may be many reasons why you want to leave a platoon. And then there is also things that leader leaves, right, the leader also can leave. This implies that another vehicle needs to act as a leader, that is re-election of a leader is also part of this first bullet, which is indeed the service request. Then leaders are if the leader finds that there are no more followers, the leader may actually dissolve the complete platoon, right. So, in other words, service requests, this is sent by vehicles wanting to enter a platoon and vehicles inside the platoon to perform very specific actions. Now, okay, great, now you have service announcements by leaders to enable potential followers, then there are service requests by followers, and there is a provision to create and all that. How do you maintain this platoon? How do you ensure that if it is going over 1000 miles, you need to keep exchanging information? Let us look at how that happens. That is possible through what are known as control data messages, which are sent periodically to ensure that the platoon continues to behave the same way, the movements are same, and there is a provision to ensure that no collision is possible between these vehicles and so on and so forth, right. So, this is very important. Now, let us look at a little bit of simple stuff. I will skip minimal platooning because it is indeed a subset of the full platoon. So, let us leave that and let us move on to the next slide. Radio is an interesting thing. This is for communication purposes. I showed in this picture that there is a radio as part of the wireless system. So, people have been talking about 5G wireless networks for the purpose of exchanging this information in the broad spectrum of V2X, and DSRC is something that IEEE has also trying to standardize in the 802.11. This is called dynamic short range radio communication. There is an 802 specification for that, and so please look up the 802 spec for automotive applications, particularly in the V2X framework. So, HC2 has been working on it, and there are some proposals also from the ETSI group on trying to look at what is a good radio and what should be its capabilities, how to support full platooning and minimal platooning and so on and so forth. So, let us move on to the next slide. Security, as you know, is a very important part of the platoon. You must be looking at leader announcements that contain information about which channel to use and the service request. They are all messages which are encrypted, have to be encrypted. They have to be there should be verification of the sender with trusted certificates. So, the full security system gets blown when we talk about the fact that platoonings have to be maintained. So, let us see, go on to the next slide. So, this slide is a very interesting slide. It just gives you a very simple idea of what we have been discussing, and let me draw your attention to this picture here. We mentioned about the d, which is the separation distance, right. We also spoke about the stopping distance, okay. We also spoke about the stopping distance, that is when it sees an obstacle it is going to distance, distance sorry that is going to be a stopping distance. So now how does everything connect from simple laws of physics which we know from kinematics. So one of the things that you can do is you can calculate this stopping distance easily, okay. You can calculate the stopping distance by applying one of the you can apply the third motion law. So stopping distance you can apply using the third law of motion, which indeed is v star t by 2, right. This is s is the stopping distance which you can see here, and so that is a very simple thing. What is v? V is indeed the initial velocity of the vehicle, it is moving, and time of travel or motion is t, and then s is simply the stopping distance. So when you say s is the stopping distance, you are talking about leader's stopping distance, which is s1, and you are also talking about the follower's stopping distance, which is s2. You expect s1 and s2 to be the same because they are, that is the reason why they are under a platoon, right. They have the same capabilities, right. So therefore s1 and is equal to s2, you can see that the braking capabilities are the same, and therefore s1 is equal to s2. You have to ensure that this is actually a very critical part, because only then you can be talking about vehicles of the same type being part of a platoon. Now in order to maintain the minimum distance, this d between separation distance which I spoke to you about, you have to ensure that s1 minus s2 plus d, that minimum separation distance, is actually greater than 0, right. That is, the vehicle distance during braking will continue to remain as the distance d, that is even after it stops dead halts, the leader and the follower, the distance is maintained to be whatever, that less than 10 meters or equal to 10 meters or whatever we discussed as part of the minimum distance between. So that continues to be maintained, so the d will be there. So if you keep that in mind and apply this stopping distance criteria, because s1 is equal to s2, you do simple substitution and simplify it, you will find that the delay to avoid collision t is twice the stopping distance divided by the velocity of the vehicles, right. So that is a very simple calculation. Again, it came from that nice paper that we found, and therefore you could definitely look up that paper, and the paper is mentioned here. Approaches for facilities layer protocols for platooning, and you can refer to this paper. Hopefully you will be able to find it on the web without much difficulty. So this is overview of a platoon, and now let us move on to see how to do this simple platoon example in VREP. So the demo is very simple. Essentially we will show you creation of a platoon. To begin with, there is no platoon, so you have to create a platoon, and then there are vehicles which want to join this platoon, and then of course when you talk about creation of a platoon, if there is no platoon, the guy who announces first indeed becomes the leader, because there is no platoon, and if he is a leader, he will have to do some very special things like what we discussed. Service announcements have to be done, and what does that contain? Position, length, speed, direction, platoon ID, service channels, all that will have to be done specially by the leaders. So we will start with a demonstration using VREP. Okay, this is VREP is something that you have done even previously part of this course. So we will continue to use VREP and give you some capability, right, show you some capabilities. Let us turn our attention to the screen. Let me show you on the extreme right are two vehicles, okay, and extreme left there are 2 vehicles. Okay. Now that means basically there are 2 platoons, so they will have different platoon IDs and they expect vehicles to join their respective platoons, and you can see that on the extreme left one and the extreme right one are shown for the purpose that the vehicles are crossing each other, the directions are different. So you expect on the left extreme those 2 part of a platoon and the right side one those 2 being part of a platoon, because they are in different directions, right. So let us start the demo, and before you start you will see something interesting thing, that there is no platoon. Therefore what should happen? Create a platoon should happen, and then you get a leader, and then the leader will make an announcement. You can see this, they are broadcasting, and you realize suddenly that 2 IDs have been announced, and then there are 2 platoons and then the followers out there. If you pause and see what actually happens to those screens, let us expand that information a little bit. You will see that Robo 3 there is no, so let us read a little bit in detail, expand that in a little bit in detail if possible. Just one screen, yes, a little bigger font if possible. Okay, so maybe you should try this when you find this code, but I will read out what is out there. It says there is no existing platoon, I am a vehicle capable of leading the platoon, welcome to platoon and join me. Then he says Robo 3 says I am a leader receiving joining request, and request to add to platoon is coming from a follower, and then the leader says okay you are part of the platoon, so add it to platoon. This is what, these are the messages that come about. You can try this message, you can read up the paper, you can look up the YouTube videos I mentioned to you from Scania, from Mercedes, from Volvo, and get a nice idea of what exactly is happening in this world of platooning. Now there is another screen, so the Robo that we have chosen here is the, like the previous one, the Pioneer P3, and those were essentially the ones that were asked to become leaders and followers. You can see that the second screen is saying that Robo 2 in the platoon, it is a follower and it is following, and then it is going behind the leader, right, and that message continues to go as long as the leader exists and the platoon exists, the follower continues to give out messages. So this in turn this essentially conveys our idea of platooning. Thank you very much.